Let's talk about Death Troopers.
Yeah.
How long have you wanted to read Death Troopers?
I remember last October mentioning it. And I forget, I think we might have been in the middle of like the Thrawn trilogy maybe or something like that. I can't remember what it was. And I was like, well, all right, well, maybe another time we'll do it. And then I think our last book was a Thrawn book. And I was like, oh, man, we're probably going to be doing the trilogy. But then the next book wasn't part of it. I'm like, we could do Death Troopers.
We could do Death Troopers.
And we also had like a shorter time frame. And this one was also a shorter book. And I'm like, hey, it's a shorter book than Thrawn was too. Like, maybe we can do this. And you're like, all right. I'm like, yes.
Yeah, it was so short. I effectively like read it twice. Because at one point I was just kind of like, I was really busy last time when I was doing this. What happened? I was listening to it again, and I just pretty much read the entire book again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My goal is usually like I like to try to listen through because I usually do it on audiobook.
Yeah.
I like to listen through if I can on a 1 speed, just because I want to try to absorb it all.
Yeah.
And then I try to go through it again on like a 1.2 or so, just where it's a little faster through, but where I'm not like trying to listen for all the details, but I'm trying to pick up extra like. So, a lot of times there's foreshadowing that I missed the first time because I didn't realize what it was going to be happening or something. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they said this. I didn't even realize this, By the time they drop this part, I've forgotten about this part or something. So it's cool to see those moments. But, I think I enjoyed this book. I think I had a lot of fun with it. Like I said before, I really enjoyed just reading this book and not necessarily trying to think about anything it's connected to. Just let me read this book and see where it's at. And most of the story is pretty contained, so I wasn't too like feeling like I was lost or anything with anything. But what did you think of the book?
I mean, it was nice to step back into Legends, if only for the feeling of, I feel like Legends did this, and the new canon, I still love the new canon, but the new canon genre sometimes is Star Wars. Whereas Legends, sometimes that was the case, but other times it was like, hey, no, this is aliens mixed with, Schindler's or The Shining, they would take the feelings of other properties and bring it. And that's kind of like what Lucas would do in Clone Wars. So I kind of feel like
this
connection.
is the Godzilla kind of episode. And this is
So I definitely used to feel that way with some Legends book, and this book, I guess, being the return to Legends for me, because I've read, 90% of Legends. So I never read this book.
You never read this one?
I never read this one. Zombies wasn't really my thing back in the day.
Sure, yeah.
So I was just like, it's cool, but it's just zombie troopers. It's not like any of my favorite characters are in it.
Sure, yeah. No, I get you there. 'Cause that was always one of my things where it's like, oh, Death Trooper sounds really cool, but like I don't really, I don't know what it's about. It's always one where I'm like, I would like to read this at some point.
Sure.
So, but the book got me, especially in the beginning, because like we started off on the Purge, which was a like prison ship, right?
So the Purge is an Imperial prison transfer ship.
Yeah, and throughout the whole thing, like you meet Trig Longo, you meet I think it's Sartoris.
Yeah.
We met Kale Longo, which was Trig's brother,
his older brother,
and we met Zahara Cody.
Yeah.
And
the doctor.
And like we met these characters, and I'm like, okay. And like as it kept going, like there's talks of like Trig thinking about an inmate who like had this weird eye staring at him.
Yeah.
And then like it got closer and closer and closer, and then he vanished. And I was like, man, that's just kind of creepy.
That's weird.
And then he's like trying to go to sleep or something like that, and he's like, there's a scream down the hall, but it didn't sound like a nightmare scream. It sounded like something worse. And I was like, man, what's going on? And then like when they made the comment at one point about like the engine hums and you hear it all the time, but he's gotten used to it, I'm like, so are the engines gonna go out and that's gonna be a thing? And like we kept doing all these things, and I was like, oh, okay, so what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? And then they got me with like, I kept waiting. I was like, things are slowly building up. Something's going to happen here.
Yeah.
And then like the engines went out, but we found another ship that we were going to go to and fix it and do that. I'm like, oh, so stuff's already happened over there. Yeah. That's where everything's going to kind of really be coming up. So I thought like, we went to the med bay. There was someone who was sick, someone who already died. Like all these kind of things were going on. I'm like, things are gonna start, and something's already breaking out here. But I ended up liking the way the story went because we got a lot more on like what causes this Death Trooper zombie thing.
It's
like
a very self-contained book, but it really goes deep with its explanations.
Yeah. Like the black virus is like the thing they call this, I think. No, Black Wing virus.
It's the Black Wing project,
that they call this, where it's, as I suspected, was a Imperial weapon, biological weapon thing. And we had viruses in, Clone Wars.
The Blue Shadow virus.
Blue Shadow virus. Like, we had like biological weapon stuff that was being used in that. And we also had the Clone Wars with the worms.
Yeah.
Which I always watch that and I'm like, oh man, I bet this is kind of like a Death Trooper kind of idea here.
Well,
so like reading through it,
but that's also PG.
Sure, yeah.
This isn't.
No.
This isn't. If you're at all squeamish or like me, where like certain things kind of can make you uncomfortable. Like there were parts in this book I could not finish right when I started listening to them, and I had to like take a second.
Yeah.
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 Like bad. This is on my list. Later we'll do a list of our scariest things. There's a scene from this on my list.
That's one you're scared. Okay.
One of my scariest things in Star Wars. Period.
Yeah.
That'd
be interesting when we get to that because like mine doesn't cover legend stuff. Mine's more canon things because I didn't have a lot of like scary things from legends.
It's an extra
one. So. Sure, yeah.
But still.
But no, like I couldn't like. I don't like needles. I had to listen to some needle scenes.
Yeah,
you know? And I'm like,
it's like our only hope. This needle we've reused.
Damn it! No, I don't want a needle scene. Please take it away.
Yeah. But so we have this prison ship. It loses power. There seems to be there's a Star Destroyer over there, and there's only 10 life forms aboard. And it's like that's weird. There's usually 10,000. Let's go over there and check it out. So they formed a team. They started giving names, and I started writing all the names down. And then I should have just remembered Alien because I'm like I don't have to remember these names very long because I didn't.
Well, yeah, because I think they send 10 over. They split off into 2 teams of 5.
Yeah.
And only 5 get back to the ship.
Back.
And the other 5 they don't see again after a point.
Yeah. So they bring back the virus. It starts to spread, and then everything hits the fan. I do want to talk about the brothers though. I really enjoyed them, and I wonder. I mean, this has to be a thing I'm bringing with me. I kept like sometimes when a new original character is in a novel, I have to like cast them in my head.
Oh, okay.
So when it first started, I was going, Michael Schofield, and Lincoln Burrows, Prison Break.
Okay.
I was thinking that, but then they ended up being the younger.
The younger kids.
So then I'm thinking like, okay, not like Sam and Dean, but like young Sam and Dean when their dad would leave him. So then I casted that in my head and I kept it the entire time because I really, really loved the character, especially of Kale, and the way that he was just like a pragmatic protector of his brother.
Yeah.
And I loved him, and I knew that as soon as I wrote down, like, I love Kale, that I'm watching a zombie. I'm listening to a zombie thing.
Yeah.
I shouldn't.
This
ever
is a
do
horror
that.
book.
Yeah, I don't know why I did that.
We know the names of like 6 people.
I know.
Like who's gonna survive? And that's one of the things too. Like when going through this, I'm like, who is going to survive this? And I don't know. Especially like these names that I don't know. But yeah, I know. I really like them. I also liked Wembley, I think was the name of the guard, and he had like a BLX droid or whatever it was with him, and
a security droid. Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought like, especially for like an Imperial guard, I thought that he was rather cool.
Well, he's like good natured, but he's also kind of dumb.
Sure,
like,
yeah, I get what you mean.
In his own way, so I guess just the Imperial side of it, kind of like he just rolls with it.
Yeah.
It's always interesting, like. Whenever we have a character that's Imperial, like Dr. Cody, how do we separate her from what the Empire usually does? And they did a pretty good job, Dr. Cody.
Sure, yeah.
But she felt like Lori not Lori. What's the name of the doctor from Prison Break?
Tancredi.
Yeah, Tancredi.
Sarah Tancredi.
She likes the prisoners a little bit more, so I kept like even Sartoris. I was like, he's like the big dude from Prison Break. So
you kept relating everything to Prison Break?
Yeah,
okay.
I love that show so much. So whenever I think of prison stuff and I was trying to cast, I kept thinking of that. But very, very soon the characters became their own.
Yeah.
I didn't have to do that anymore.
Yeah. No, I like Dr. Cody. The story with her and Sartoris and I mean Longo, like they all have a connection.
Yeah. So
like you're getting their connection in history with them also being just separate people that you don't know. Yeah. But Sartoris has that Imperial, like kind of typical Imperial thing. Yeah. And they even go into it at one point talking about like his psychological like testing.
Yeah.
And like sometimes we take people like you just to do the things the Empire sometimes needs to do, kind of like you're a little bit more on the edge of like the brink, I guess, than other Imperials sometimes, you know? And I think that was right before he shot the warden.
With 2 E11 blasters at the same time and turned his head into a cantaloupe. This this thing felt like a movie in that it was so visceral and gory for Star Wars. There's a part of me that's like, much like when we were reading Battle Scars, the
Jedi?
The Jedi Fallen Order, Jedi Survivor in between book, where I was like, I think the sex content in this is like so off the top, it's inappropriate for Star Wars sometimes. I started to feel that way with Death Troopers, but then I just enjoyed the story so much. And it's a Legends book. I don't really, I don't want to say I don't care, but
sure,
this is like fiction with no consequence.
Sure.
Not to say that normal things have consequence, but
I get what you mean. I do like similar to like when we talk about Marvel. I love the idea of Star Wars being a franchise that also tries to hit different audiences and different like ratings, right? Like different genres and stuff too.
Yeah.
So like going for an adult genre in horror for Star Wars is like, that's a cool idea. But going for also like the more whimsical, like it's like the idea of having what is it? Jedi Adventures? Like it's like the High Republic, like kids show. Where I'm like, well, that's probably not necessarily made for me.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I like it being there for kids getting into Star Wars or wanting more Star Wars, and then also learning with it.
Yeah.
At the same time of that, I'd love to have like a horror series or movie or game that sets like that. This is made for mature audiences, and this is the route we're going with it. But it's in that universe because like Star Wars can be light and fantasy and really cool hero kind of stuff, but also it can be dark and grimy and grungy and scary, and
it's not one book, it's a library of books.
Yeah. So I like same thing with Marvel. Like I love when they do like a horror Marvel thing.
Yeah.
Like I don't think we've really had like a horror genre series or movie or anything for Star Wars yet,
Not this intense.
There's usually a lot of action. But like even hitting like I think there's been like a romance book or something like that, right? That we haven't read or something.
There's a lot of stuff.
And just hitting those different genres I think is really cool. So this definitely was getting something a little different in Star Wars where I'm like, man, usually Darth Maul got cut in half.
Yeah.
You didn't really see anything,
Yep. And this is in terms of like supernatural stories don't necessarily scare me, but like this is more like it's sci-fi fantasy.
Yeah.
And the horror described in the book just felt very real to me. So it was very effective in weirding me out, especially just the descriptions of just the terrible, like, it's zombies,
Zombies.
Like, yeah, those people aren't zombies. And, so whenever they get back up, I don't have much, like, sympathy for them, you know?
Sure.
But they died terribly. Like, all of those deaths described are just like I never want that to happen. I don't want to die that way. I don't want to be eaten. And this happened. Both of those things happened. I confronted both of those fears in this book.
No, I mean there's a I don't remember if it's Austin or which. There's one of the guards that they boarded the Star Destroyer. They come back. They're coughing. A lot of them are coughing now. But like when they're in the med bay at one point, they're talking about someone who's coughing so much, and like he just like launches up and like a geyser of blood shoots out, and then like and then the droid there that's helping him turns around, he's like covered in blood, and like geez man, there's a lot of blood in Star Wars. Dude, it's kind of cool. It's heavy and dark. And,
so it's so out there. It's so different that when I don't know if you want to go into it yet, but like when something familiar showed up, I was like,
it's okay.
It was whiplash. So continue.
I was not expecting to have anything I recognized in this book at all. And previously in this book, they're walking through Wembley. I was mentioning Wembley, right? Wembley in his dying moments, because this virus gets on board, everyone starts dying, right? They're coughing, they're doing all this stuff. There are a few people who appear to be immune. They're not they're not having symptoms
for some reason.
Dr. Cody, I think, got blood on her. Didn't get anything. At one point, someone came up to the bars and like spit blood into like Trigg's face.
Right,
and I was like, "Oh my God, no, he's done for." But I think the brothers had an immunity too for some reason. Like whatever, it's like a 99% like effectiveness, and then like that 1% is immune. You know. But the Wembley guy like opens in his dying moment. It seems the gates to be able to let them out, and I was like, "That's really cool."
The rest of the Imperial administration just leaves the prisoners down there to deal with to die.
Yeah. We got to deal with our own stuff. Whatever.
Yeah, Wembley's he was a cool dude.
Yeah.
You could tell like he's rank and file, but his last thing he tried to do was let those boys out.
And he said like, I'll look out for you guys as much as I can. And then when the moment came down to like I'm gonna die, I'm gonna open these gates. And I assume he opened them for all the prisoners too, because then also like you're gonna get more zombies later on, you know. And also like the villain of their story, Ormus or something like that, I think was his name. It also lets that be a thing too.
Yeah.
So that they can confront that, because there's like a bounty on their head. But
dude, when Kale just ripped that dude's nose piercing out of his face.
Oh, yeah, I fixed his face or whatever, that whole thing.
That was so badass. Because he was just like, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to stab you. What are you going to do? And Kale's like, run! I loved it so much. Oh, man.
But what I was getting to was that when they got out and started walking around and looking around, they came across, like, there's all kinds of different prisoners, different species and aliens of all kinds. And they came to a room, and it said that there was, like, 2 Wookiees and a little Wookiee. And the little Wookiee was, like, sad with her parents, and they went and tried to, like, break, like, come on, let's go. And the way it affected them seemed so different because, like, they talked about how, like, their necks had swollen and, like, ruptured and stuff, and it seemed different from the other ones. But that Wookiee stayed there. And then
that was my scene.
Oh, is that your scary scene that you're talking about?
That's one of the most horrifying scenes I've ever listened to.
Oh,
I could not listen to. And then the baby Wookiee wants to stay with its parents, and it wraps their dead parents' arms around it to simulate a hug so it can feel better about itself. And then they walk away, and then you hear this little baby Wookiee, toddler, whatever it is, screaming because it's being eaten.
Well, you assume so, because then you hear.
That's what they said.
Because it screamed and then it stopped, and then you heard slurping sounds. Is what you heard.
I know.
You don't know what it was. Could have been anything. Could have been anything, Eric.
I know.
But also, like,
I couldn't do it. Like, I literally had to shut it off and not go back. Stop
here. Yeah. I've had moments like that in some things. I gotta pause here now.
It was devastating to me.
Yeah, I do love the sense of, like, dread that there's something following them.
Yeah.
And then, like, they leave, and then you hear that behind. You're like, whoa, what is coming? You know.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that was a heavy scene. But with that, later on we follow Zahara, and she looks to find, like, there's only 6 life forms still left on the whole ship.
Yeah.
I did find it interesting that they were like, well, we can expand, motion, brainwaves, like all these different things. Like, we look for this.
Yeah.
But, like, we can expand that. And I was like, oh, man, you expand that. What else are you going to find? Oh, do that. Like, but they find that there's 2 people down in, like, solitary confinement. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, man, like, you didn't even put these people in the regular. And she's thinking the same thing. And we get down there, and one, like, she opens up, and it's a roar. And the roar in the book, like, it seems so scary and stuff, too. And it's a Wookiee coming out. And I'm like, oh, my gosh, it's a Wookiee. How tough is it going to be? But it calmed down when there was a blaster. And I didn't even think about anything whenever they opened the next door, and they said that there's a guy with dark hair, and he comes out, too. And I was like, okay, who's this guy going to be? What's going on with this? Mm-hmm. Like, I was so surprised to get Han and Chewie.
And then the guy just goes, easy, Chewie.
Yeah.
And then it does the thing. The audiobooks do this all the time. They only have specific musical cues that they use sometimes. Mm. And sometimes they use the
Yeah.
And sometimes, I think, inappropriate spots.
I get you.
And it kind of distracts me. Mm. This was the best use of that.
The best time to get it?
Because literally, that's the same sound cue when Han and Chewie come onto the Falcon. Chewie, we're home. Like, dun-dun-dun. I just felt it was such an appropriate use of that theme, and I had no freaking clue Han and Chewie were in this.
I didn't know either. I had no idea. I was like, okay, here's all the characters I'm gonna get. This is cool. It's very self-contained. That way, you don't,
I know.
You don't interfere with any of the canon of the old legends back when you wrote this.
I just so funny that I'm reading a Star Wars book. I'm like, oh, a Star Wars character.
I was very surprised.
So surprised, man.
Now,
it was so cool.
The worst thing about it is that I get to the point where I'm like, well, I'm not worried about them. They have to make it.
Yeah.
But what about the other characters? But it was a cool addition when we've lost so many people to get these 2 brought in.
Yeah, and then effectively, narratively, you have like this handoff as they're with characters, and when those characters aren't with Han and Chewie, like it's like they're in more danger, they're not in danger, Mm-hmm.
And for the most part, for most of the book, usually they were characters with the characters we were following. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until later on when we kind of like, now we're following Han.
Yeah.
But in that scene, like, there is a scary moment for Chewie where, like, they have like a cure, an antivirus more so, not necessarily a cure, but like they took the Waste, the robot that worked with
2-1B medical droid.
Yeah, Waste.
Do you know 2-1Bs? It's the same one.
They're just the medical droid,
yeah,
right?
It's the one that you see all the time.
It's like the medical droid that you see.
Yeah, that's that medical droid.
But they call him Waste.
Waste.
And I was like,
as a term of endearment.
I did love it. It's like, waste, like waste of space or waste of resources. But now he looks at it as a term of endearment, and I was like, that's kind of cute. I like it. It's like Deku, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But Waste created like a antivirus out of Dr. Cody, who appeared to be immune to this virus, and then she injected Han, and it seemed okay. But then she injected Chewie with it, and what we had been told before of the other Wookiees, he started getting the same thing, and he started swelling and getting really mad.
What'd you think about being able to be
in his head?
In his head.
That was kind of cool.
Like
the Life Day stuff?
I mean, I realized, like, oh my God, we haven't read a lot of Chewie stuff. When I was listening to that, I was like, Aaron's never had this. He's never been in Chewie's head.
I've never been in Chewie's head. They mentioned Nala, or what is it?
Mala.
Mala. They mentioned Mala.
They mentioned some...
they mentioned Life Day.
Well, in the Legends continuity, Chewie is married. Those characters are canon. You know?
Yeah. No, yeah. I just thought it was really cool. I'm like, oh, hey. Now, I mean, I guess, of course, there I start bringing in some of that. I know that. Yeah. I know that person, you know? Like, all right. And he's thinking about his grandpa and his son. Yeah. I'm like, I know them. I know, right? Yeah. But the other thing, like there's like this entity almost that like he's hearing someone else talk to him and stuff. And it's just like eat, kill. It's just like this devouring kind of.
Which you don't want a Wookiee.
No, you don't. You don't want it to eat and kill and rip off your arms and do all that stuff. You don't. But that's what he wanted to do. Yeah. But then he couldn't breathe and he fell unconscious. Yeah. And then we get more of a needle scene because I was already like, damn it, now we got to do the stupid thing. Yep. And then now we had to like remove the swelling liquid. The liquid. To try to save him. And they kept going back and forth.
That's the cool. That's the thing about this zombie story is that, you know, it's not about just making zombies. It's that you create zombies to farm the liquid they produce, which then creates more zombies, you know? But like they were using them as like almost like farm equipment in this place. Yeah. But I love the detail that it makes the zombies like they're not just, you know, mindless. Like they have like a hive mind thing. They're like almost like
insects. A swarm.
Yeah, like swarm. And they also like learn a little bit.
Yeah.
So the longer they're zombies, the more terrifying they can be, and they're programmed / designed to just get out and spread.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a very very scary situation. But I loved how it was introduced to us, where we just found like lungs, you know?
Dude, yeah. So getting to that Star Destroyer with the group, one group, and it's the last time we see anyone from the party that doesn't come back.
Yeah.
Is they found like the lung room and just whatever these experiments are that they're doing or what's going on and what they're testing.
Yeah.
But whenever they had a moment of like they screamed, I was like, the hell is this? But
when the lung screamed.
Yeah. I'm like, wow, what does this mean?
Lung shouldn't scream, dude.
No, they shouldn't. Yeah. But the more we got into the book and stuff, and after I was listening to it the second time, I was like, is this like a summoning thing? Because like they all have like this screaming and almost like they're screaming here and you hear things like responding over here. It felt like, oh, this started it maybe. This awoke everything.
Sure, yeah. Mm-hmm. But yeah, they pretty much just like scream in agony, and that's how they communicate to the other people on the ship that also scream in agony back, and then they learn.
Yeah.
So that's great.
Yay.
Yep. But yeah, we had Han and Chewie in the book, which was the biggest surprise.
It was.
For me, I would say.
I was very surprised. Like that part was the biggest surprise. Yeah. Everything else was like not quite what I expected, but like in a zombie book. Mm. Like you were talking about like the gore and the visceral elements of it. Yeah. I wouldn't expect that from Star Wars, but
yeah. I mean, you know, like I said, one of my recurring nightmares is being eaten. You know,
that's a recurring nightmare for you.
Yeah, I have a recurring nightmare of like being like in the jaws of something, down its throat, in its stomach, waiting, you know, to be digested. You know, I don't know why it comes up a lot, but I have that dream common all the time. And then just like body horror is always something. So when when Kale and Trig, when Kale and Trig see their dad, you know, and it's like, oh, and his jaw's hanging off, you know, like it was so easy for me to like think of like me and my brother and my dad too, you know.
Oh,
like,
okay. This is you and Kenny, and then your dad is the one coming at you.
Yeah. And it was just, it was just quite terrible, man. And it was really effective. Yeah. Yeah. Did this live up to your expectation or anything like that? Or
I think so. Yeah. There's a lot of moments in it that I really liked. I love I love them walking through the ship, like especially we have Trig and Kale trying to get to an escape pod to get out, and then we had Zahara going down to the solitary, and they talk about what they see and how terrible it looks and just all the gore and bodies and everything. And then we get down, and Chewie and Han have been in solitary confinement, and she's explaining to them, and I'm sure it sounds crazed. You know?
Lady.
Okay. Whatever. You want to inject me with this stuff, and it's a cure for this. All right.
There's a magical force that controls everything.
Yeah, right? I've seen a lot of things around it. Yeah. But then, like, when you go out, and, like, they had a thing where it's like I dropped the blaster and went to help Chewie and stuff, and you look, and there's no blaster, and there's no bodies, and everything's just gone.
Everything's gone. That was... And you're like... That's terrifying.
What?
Yeah.
And there's a moment when Trig, Kale, Han, Chewie, and Zahara all finally meet up. And there is I'm trying to remember exactly what the lines were. They're going to go and do something, I think, to try to get the escape pod opened up. Mm-hmm. And Trig says, like, is there anyone else left? He's like, no, we're all that's left. Because Sartorius took the escape pod.
Yep.
Left Trig and Kale.
He definitely did.
These are the last 5 on the ship. And then he's like, I realized later that I asked her the wrong question. I should have asked, what happened to all the bodies?
What happened to the bodies?
And I'm like, that'd have been my first question.
Been my first
I don't care if anyone else is left.
Yeah.
I didn't even know those guys, you know? Like, where are the bodies?
Someone came up and said, hey, where's everybody? Like, you know, I'd be like, are you really not going to ask me about the bodies?
The one thing I had, and this is before, because like they're about to like escape the purge and go to the Star Destroyer. Mm-hmm. I kept waiting for the BLX droid to come back, unless I missed a part where like you hear it getting ripped up, and I don't remember because he stayed with Wembley. He's like, I'm gonna stay here, but I thought at a point whenever Wembley like got back up or something like that, like maybe something would have happened, but maybe not.
I think he liked Wembley. He wanted to stay with Wembley.
Maybe, yeah.
I mean, because it says like it's like he thinks about it. Because they do the same thing with the Wookiee. Mm-hmm. The Wookiee like thinks about it, but now you don't see the droid again. You do see the Wookiee again. Unfortunately, I hated that part where it's like on him. They use the words like a squirming rat, and I was just like Jesus. And then they get shot, and like Chewie has a moment where he like looks at the little baby, you know, zombie Wookiee, and like says nothing and walks away, and I was like, Jesus. Mm-hmm. It's terrifying. Mm-hmm. You know, and knowing that he's got a little one at home he's probably thinking of, you know?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
No, but I love that, and I love, like, when they get to they got to the bridge, and I believe this is the moment when they say, like, you know, 200 more life forms showed up, or whatever it was, whatever the number is on the purge that they needed. And they're like, what? And they look, and there's just a bunch of beeps, and they're all heading to the bridge. Yeah. I'm like, oh, what? Like, and then you cut, and it's the brother carrying the other brother running from all these things, and they have nowhere to go but on the Star Destroyer where everything started. I'm like, oh, shit, this isn't good.
Yep. No, I thought there were great moments. I thought there was, you know, a lot of, for how dark it was, you know, Trig, like, still had a lot of hope, and, like, kept that hope up.
For a while.
And then lost it.
Yeah.
But when he lost it, it felt earned. It wasn't, you know, it felt
like... I was constantly impressed
by this 13-year-old's point that he could push himself to until he couldn't go anymore.
Yeah.
You know?
I was saddened by Kale's death. Like, getting onto the Star Destroyer, like, he got bit by his dad. You said about his dad being there.
His dad did it. Yeah.
His dad bit him.
Yeah.
And there's a scene. I think this is one of the things I like. I like the Chewie in the head, eat, kill, like getting an idea of that. I liked...
Sing the Song of Life Day.
Yeah.
Eat, kill.
I liked Kale, like, just saying, cut it off. It's like, what do you mean? And it's like, no, cut it off. It's like, where's your pain? It's like, there is no pain. I can feel it taking over kind of thing. Cut off my leg. And I was like, man, like, what do you have to feel? Like, you know, Walking Dead and stuff we've watched, I felt like there's pain, but people must not feel that kind of thing.
Sure.
He had no idea this worked that way. And he said, cut it off.
Yeah.
I'm not taking any chances. Mm-hmm. And then they cut off his leg, and they can't get away from the door far enough away before they bust through with blasters and shoot him. I was like, the zombies are using guns now.
The zombies are using guns.
I was like, oh, my God.
Uh-huh.
So that moment.
These zombies, like, by the nature of, like, their scream and they can communicate with each other, they somehow are able to do kind of more, like, rudimentary things. They're not going to be awesome at it. They talk about how at the beginning, like, they're stormtrooper zombies and they can't hit, but as they get better, they're getting closer, and Han can smell ozone now because it's so close, you know? I just thought it was a funny play when, like, stormtroopers suck. Oh, no, when they're zombies, they're better.
They're getting better. They're getting better. But like that moment there, like what'd you think of like Sartoris escapes in the escape pod, but doesn't get out because they tractor beamed him back in.
I was like, wait, so are there real people over there like doing that? Okay, interesting. But
Which there were some other real people.
And they were cannibals.
Well, yeah.
By necessity, but still.
They drew straws.
They did. Hey, we're not monsters.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Everyone had an equal chance to get eaten.
They had a quick death.
Yeah.
We had a long buffet.
Yeah, right? But that was a scary moment. That was a little different where it's like Sartoris is like alive, but now you're surrounded by 8 cannibals. And then he starts killing them and just throwing them out of the ship and letting the other things get him.
Yeah.
No. But yeah, no, the growth of these things, like as they continue to go, like they can use tractor beams. They're starting to shoot stuff. They're like Sartoris escapes by shooting the X-Wing and killing some of them that way. And then they do that too and shoot their ship. And I was like, oh my gosh, they do keep learning. Yeah. And that was a terrifying thing.
Terrifying.
Of like undead stormtroopers, whatever.
Yeah, they're like pointing an X-Wing up. Like, well, we're going to do this.
Yeah. Up there, get him. So, but I liked Kale's story, Trick's story. I thought were really good. Yeah. Sartoris, like I didn't necessarily like him, but I like that he came back around in a redemption-ish way.
Yeah, he's like our true blue Imperial, but sometimes you go through something so crazy, you got to be a little bit better.
I feel like it turns into a point where it's the dead versus the living, and it's like he gets bitten. I do like that they had the lifter thing from the beginning.
They did.
When I re-listened to it, I heard it again. I'm like, okay, so like it's already been established that it can't hold a lot of weight.
Yeah.
So then later on, when Trig is escaping from his brother,
his undead brother,
and having to crawl out of this vent that he followed him into, and all this stuff happens, and now he's falling to his death because also Ormis is here, pulling him down into the thousands of them down in the reactor hole or whatever it is that they're over top of.
Pretty much like those endless shafts that you see like all over the place. Like,
with no railings because they never have railings.
At the bottom, there's like 10,000 zombies all looking up and, they notice you all at the same time. Oh, terrifying.
Yeah, I hate that. But whenever he got caught, I'm like, oh, Zahara? Yeah. I did not expect it to be Sartoris catching him. But like he's already been bitten, so he's already like a dead man walking kind of thing. So him like catching them and saving them, and then also like I'm gonna sacrifice myself so you guys can get out of here.
Sure.
I was like, well, I'm glad that like there's the story where I don't know, Sartoris was trying to get like information from their father, and then like just killed their father. And Zahara, like she's like, I'm not for this. This is not what I signed up for, and that's kind of why she's wanting to leave the Empire.
She hands in her resignation. She's gonna leave after this trip.
Yeah. So like you have that bit there, and Trig has now lost his brother. He's lost his father. At least this is the last good deed that Sartoris does, is at least saves this one son for this family that he's already killed the father for, and all this stuff's happened. He kind of, in a way, he's the one who brought it back to the ship, but he did what the warden told him to do too. But, but no, I like that aspect of it. I thought it was scary that they get back to the hangar and they're trying to fly away, and so are the zombies.
The zombies are trying to get out. Yeah,
that was a crazy part too. And I'm like, okay, well, we must self-destruct the ship or something, right? Like we're gonna stop this, and then they're just flying out. I'm like, we're not stopping this. They're just flying out. All right. But they talk about like the flaw that this thing has is that it can't get like too far from like the hive mind of it or something too. So they start dying.
They're only smart when they're amassing in numbers.
Yeah. And then once they're all kind of on their own, they just kind of die.
The virus will die out.
Yeah. So I was like, okay.
I mean, which I guess if you're designing something, you want it to be able to eventually be like, and it's done.
Yeah. We can control this because you don't want to take over the whole galaxy.
Yeah.
So, no, I think the story was really good. I couldn't not think about how much fun I would have if this was like a game. Like you played Dead Space more recently. Yeah. I was just thinking like this in that style. Yeah. And then I jumped into the idea of like, I haven't played Outlaws yet. I still want to play Outlaws. But I imagine like in an idea where, because I don't know if this would make great a whole game, or if you're jumping around from different points, or if you're doing it more of like Until Dawn, right? Okay. Where it's more story oriented. Yeah. But if it's more in the idea of like more action oriented, like Dead Space or something, remember in Jedi Fallen Order where like sometimes if you lost to a bounty hunter, it would happen to be the time that it would take you to this other location, and you've been imprisoned, and you have to like fight your way out.
Like there was no winning that battle. You're going to get taken.
Yeah, like that. Like there's other bounty hunters you beat.
Sure.
This one you didn't. I was like, how cool would it be to be like playing like Outlaws? And since I haven't played it, like I don't have the great. But I always think of like Grand Theft Auto, where it's like, you've been arrested. All right, well you just pop out of here and now you go. What if there's like that one time where you've been arrested, but you're being sent and they put you on a barge, and you get released by a doctor who has a cure, and now you're just in the middle of this. Like you kind of jump into the middle, and now you have to escape, and that's like a small little extra mission that just sometimes happens.
This happens.
It's like it's once in a playthrough, this can happen. I was like, that would just be a cool moment where it's like, I don't know what's going on, and I'm just tossed in here like Han, being woken up, and there's zombies, and I'm just trying to escape. And I was like, that would be really neat to just have, like, you just wake up in a prison barge and like, well, all right, how do I escape this? And then the doors open, and then now you're the last half of the book. I was like, that'd be really
fast zombies. Damn it.
Yeah, and then like imagine like playing through and it's like they're just zombies. Okay, get away from them. Oh, they're fast zombies. Get away from them. They shoot blasters. Shoot back. Like it just keeps increasing until you can get out of the ship.
Yep.
So that was one of the things I just kept thinking about. I'm like, man, that would be really cool. Maybe someone will use this. But like they kind of used a general idea with Clone Wars.
Yeah, it's a little more like animal based than it is viral or whatever, right? That one's more bugs. Yeah. Whereas this is a virus, but they effectively work the same.
It still kind of has that hive mind aspect. It still has like they're being controlled and don't have like they're like dead. They can still use blasters and elements like that. And I was like, it's cool that they can still pull. Cause I figure that comes from this, but maybe it comes from some George Lucas pulled from all kinds of stuff. Maybe he pulled from like another movie or story or something too. But no, I think this. I had a lot of fun reading this book. It was fun during October to like be going through like a horror Star Wars thing. And then it wasn't until today, like Nexus didn't know that we were gonna pick this book last time. Usually he kind of like gives recommendations for different books, and he was like, "Don't forget, like here's the recommendation that I have for your next book." And I was like, "Oh, we're gonna do Death Troopers 2."
Yeah, this is surprise him again.
Yeah, and I was like, "Haha, it's a joke." And he's like, "Red Harvest?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And then like you had said like, "Oh, there's like a prequel book." Yeah, like, there is. Yeah, I didn't know that. So
famously, Blue Harvest was the code name for the working Star Wars title, so that they could avoid press and being charged and stuff. So Red Harvest is the prequel name, and I just thought that was really clever.
Yeah, that's neat. So. Yeah, maybe we can read that sometime too.
I do also. I appreciate the way the book ended. I loved that. Like one of my favorite things from like the first Harry Potter book is there's this great line after they take out the cave troll in the bathroom, like they save Hermione and they work together to do it. And there's this line where it's like, there are a few things that 11-year-olds can do and not become best friends for life. And taking down a fully grown mountain troll is one of them. I liked the kind of like through war sibling energy the Doctor and Trig had in that final scene. But that scene was just so beautiful because in the book the Doctor finds this note.
Yeah, on the way to solitary confinement.
She finds this note and it's you do not know who this person is. It's just a beautiful, heartfelt, imperial thinking of his family in the last moments of his life. And the book ends with, I don't even know how they did it because they don't even know who it was. Like the signature was all messed up, right?
Sure, yeah.
But somehow they find that widow and their 3 kids that he talks about. And I just love that ending. And I love that when the mother goes through an emotional response and then invites them in and they say, because the book was so visceral in its description of horror, the smell of horror, the taste, and I love the book ends with, and they entered into the sound of children and the smell of tea. I just thought that was nice.
Yeah.
Like I was like, thank you. I needed that.
No, that was really good. I had forgotten about the note when we got to that point, the epilogue, because I was like, oh, Zahara has unfinished business. I wonder what this is going to be. And I teared up during that, like when it was like her reading and the kids were like grouping around it and everything too, and they're reading like the last words from their dad. And I was like, man, this is so sad. Good. But she just like looks up and it's not like why, or she says, thank you, because it's been however long and they don't know what's happened to their father.
She mentions like all the Imperials were already here, and she's like apprehensive to talk to them more. I doubt there was much like.
I'm getting no answers. I just want to know what happened. Is he alive? Is he not alive? And I really loved that she just said thank you and then offered tea because at least now there's closure.
Yeah.
But no,
so it was a good dismount to a otherwise terrifying book.
Yeah. The one thing I liked and didn't like in it was in the beginning of each chapter they all had a title.
Yeah.
Which I thought was really cool because a lot of the books we've read lately they don't have that.
Yeah.
The only thing is I wish that up to a point they didn't feel as different. In the first 12 chapters or so, like there'd be like little differences. One of them was like they would say like one chapter was like words, and then there was like a different like voice in the background was like words.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's just kind of creepy, you know? Another one had like this radio interference sound, like you couldn't quite hear what was being said, like you know. But then eventually, like it got to the point where they would just be like, "Awakening, VHB."
Yeah, I know.
Tressa!
It was crescendoing, Aaron.
I guess so, but like I don't know. I kind of wanted them to just have a little bit of a different feel, and then eventually I was like, "All right, yeah, I know, yell it. Okay, yeah, you yell it. Okay, yeah, you yell it." But I loved like them giving me like a little feel each one, and sometimes I feel like just the yell one didn't match what was happening with the rest of it, you know?
Yeah.
Like I don't know, the one whenever Sartoris is meeting the cannibals would have been nice to be like, I don't remember what it was called, you know, but it'd been nice to have a little bit of, I don't know, just a different sound. Like, oh, what are we doing here? You know, I don't know.
I get you.
So, but no, it was. I did like that they were trying to get you into that mindset throughout the book. Even the very beginning, like I was like, you know, dead boys, and I was like, oh no, what are the dead boys? You know, what's that going to be? Or the meat house or whatever it was called. You know, like, and they were just like, here's what they're called, dead boys, because there's a bounty on their heads now. And I'm like, okay, but they sounded. I'm already in the scary mindset. It sounded sinister and scary. You know. So it just kind of kept me in that. Mm-hmm. But I did like them having their own titles and everything. Yeah. Like Black Tank Blues, and it would be like Black Tank, you know.
It would.
The silliest one good. I thought was whenever it was like, because some of those fit, and they would be like, you know, say it 3 times is a cool one because it was like say it 3 times, like say it, you know, and it had a whisper to it. But the one that I thought was the funniest was it was the lung one, because. Yeah. It was the one where I think they lung room, or I forget what they called it, but it was like
something like that.
It was like lung room, and then the guy just went lung room, and I'm like, that's all you that's what you give it. You can't give it something else. Like I don't know.
Oh, that's funny.
but no, overall, I don't know. I don't know if I want to say one of my favorite Legends books, but I will say one of my favorite Legends books because I have like 3 or 4 out of. I'm gonna count all Legends books that I haven't read. Yeah, this is one of my favorites. So
yeah, I definitely quite enjoyed it as well. There was one line that I liked, completely unrelated to Star Wars and to zombies and stuff. It was just good old gun safety. They said like something that their father used to say, which is, if you carry a blaster, everything else you're doing becomes second. And I loved that phrase because even if you're wielding a firearm, like. It was drilled into me since I could speak that you always treat this thing as if it's fully loaded. Like you never point at anybody for any reason, not for jest, not because it's unloaded. Like if you point at it, you might as well be saying, "Hey, I don't care if you live or die," So like that's so drilled into me that just when I saw that line, I was like, man, that's a good one.
Yes.
Everything else you do becomes second. Like I just felt like that was such a good I'm gonna remember that forever from this book. Thank you, book. Thank you, Dad. Thank you, the Longo Dad.
Yeah, no, it's important.
Yeah,
it's great.
Yep.
All right. I don't know if I have too much else right now. Well, I think we covered most of the story stuff. I wrote. This is the most notes I think I took on any book. Because what I tried to do, especially since I didn't have a lot of other canon connections or anything too, I was like, okay, I just want to focus on this book a lot. And writing things down often helps me to remember kind of the story for it. So, like, as it would go, I'd be like, ooh, okay, guard note to Kai. Ooh, what's this go? Sorry, I'm not coming home. Like, oh, man, that's so sad. Where's Waste? Oh, no, Waste isn't here.
I left my notes at home, but just because I wrote it down, I remember that line.
Yeah. No, great. Yeah. There might be, I see a couple things coming in with some questions, or at least highlighted things that I might want to look at here, where Nexus says, in Legends, after Death Troopers, in the Galaxies MMORPG.
Oh, Star Wars Galaxies, yeah.
The project is relocated to a facility on Dathomir, which, of course, it also breaks out of.
Zombies on Dathomir? What?
The Empire quarantines the area to not lose the virus and the data. Both Trig and Zahara are dropped off on Dathomir by the Millennium Falcon and start helping infected people in the quarantine zone with their antivirus.
I love when the, older games could just pull from Legends, like when they wanted to. Like, it was never like a directive, but you could tell that writers that actually kind of cared about it they'll like, oh, this, you can bring in this character from this story. You can do this here. I always liked that Legends. I felt like did that a little bit more like, I don't know, less designed. It would just kind of do it.
Sure, yeah. I mean, that would be really cool. Like, if I'm playing like an MMO, like when I played Star Wars: The Old Republic, I never played Star Wars Galaxies, but I always heard it was really cool and a lot of things they did with it. But it'd be cool if, like, hey guys, here's what's going on Dathomir. There's an outbreak of this. Yeah. It's like when you had like the Ragghouls. Yeah. Right, and you got to go down, you got to take out Ragghouls and stuff. Like in SWTOR at one point, like you get to go to like Terrace or Tenaris. I think it's Terrace is the one. Terrace. And when you go down, like there are parts where you have like these, there's some Ragghouls around and stuff. You got to deal with Ragghouls. But it'd be cool to have like, here's a zombie thing, and you come down and like they're there trying to get antivirus, and you're just trying to help with some quest lines to help this situation. Gotcha. That'd be a cool idea to have, Yeah. I would definitely like saying about it being in a game. That would be so cool to have.
I'm trying to think zombies in Star Wars. There's the Death Troopers. There's the troopers that we think might be zombied or are zombied in Ahsoka. There's the Dathomir. Do you consider? No, this is going to be
the witches. Yeah, the witches. Whenever they release like they're dead. Yeah, that's zombies.
Yeah, that's zombies.
That's just 100%. Zombies.
And I say the Geonosian bugs are pretty zombie-like. This is going to be an out there question. Is Darth Vader a zombie?
No, because he's a cyborg.
Yeah, but he's living in the husk of a dead man.
No, he's a man who's more machine now and living in a suit.
Anakin Skywalker is dead. I am what remains.
You're fighting against your own ideals here, Eric.
I know.
You know what?
No, I like both of them.
You know what? I agree. He is a zombie because Anakin's dead and Darth Vader doesn't exist.
Damn! I was thinking about that in terms of like thinking of the zombies, and I was going like, could you like by the numbers like try to push him in the door and try to like no. If Jesus was a zombie, he's a zombie.
Yeah, right. If Jesus is a zombie, I don't know. I guess it'd be in the same vein of like if you died and a spirit possessed you, are you a zombie or are you now just that person possessing that body? I don't know.
Is Darth Sion a zombie? He used the power of the dark side to like pretty much what Anakin does, but on a way crazier level, where his body's dead, but he wills himself to move.
How's he will himself to move?
He was one of the Sith Lords from KOTOR 2. There was Nihilus.
I never played KOTOR 2.
Nihilus eats everything, including planets and your spirit. And then Sion he's so angry he will not die.
Wait, so they had Galactus and then like an undead dude? Yeah. I need to play KOTOR 2.
It's a good one, dude. But you got to play the Restoration mod with it.
Where they put the planets that they cut out.
Yeah, they add in like the droid planet. And
I heard that there was a planet they cut out or so, and they never got to the ending and stuff. Yeah. But no, I've never played KOTOR 2, and I've never gotten to the end of KOTOR 1.
If you play it, you'll get to see the original version of Malachor 5, not the Malachor from Rebels.
Really?
Yeah.
That sounds cool. But yeah, I probably would not count Vader as a zombie.
All right.